Hello, what's up everyone? Welcome to this live stream where we're going to check out one of the new features of Xcode 16 that got me the most excited when it was announced, predictive code completion. So basically, the same feature than what Copilot has been offering in VS Code for a few years now. This time we have it in Xcode and we can try it. Before we get started, I want to highlight one thing, which is that I'm recording this video during a live stream. We are on July 1st, 2024, and I'm using the first beta of Xcode 16. So this is the initial version of the feature. Keep in mind that if you're watching the replay later down the line, it's possible that the predictive code completion has gotten way better than what we're going to see right now. This is the very first version, and so arguably it can only get better than this, either on the quality of the result, in the time it takes to make the suggestion, or in the UI that we have inside Xcode. Before we go into the topic, I just want to say something about the sponsor of this live stream. So this live stream has been sponsored by RevenueCat. If you've never heard of RevenueCat, they offer a solution that allows you to handle everything that's connected to in-app purchases super easily. So if you have an app that uses in-app purchases to monetize, I would definitely recommend that you learn about RevenueCat because I'm sure that they offer something that can help you. And one thing very cool is that if you're running a small app, you don't need to pay anything until you reach some revenue targets. So basically, there are no real downsides economically to giving it a try. So you have a link in the description if you want to learn more about RevenueCat. Me, once again, I have a big thank you to them because they sponsored quite a big part of my content this year and even over the past years. And it's definitely thanks to sponsors like RevenueCat I'm able to keep my content creation at the level that it currently is at. So once again, big thank you to RevenueCat for sponsoring this live stream. And now let's get started. So before we get started, I have one other thing I want to tell you. It's which computer operating system am I using? What do you need if you want to replicate what I'm going to show you? So as of right now, so July 1st, 2024, what you need to use predictive code completion in Xcode is first the beta of Xcode 16. Then you need to run the beta on macOS Sequoia, which is currently in beta. Also, it's the next version of macOS. You will need to download the model for predictive code completion, but Xcode will prompt you to download it, and you will be able to do it in the same screen than where you can also download the iOS runtime, the tvOS runtime, the visionOS runtime. It's done at the same moment. And finally, there are some hardware requirements. You need a Mac with Apple Silicon, so M1 and onwards, and also you need a Mac with 16 gigabytes of RAM. So unfortunately, this is where not everyone might, some people will not be able to use the feature, unfortunately. Typically, if you've bought a MacBook Air that typically comes with 8 gigabytes of RAM, you won't be able to run the feature as of right now. Maybe it will evolve in the future, I don't know, it's anyone's guess, but as of right now, you need 16 GB of RAM and an Apple Silicon CPU. That being said, let's actually get started. So I have prepared a few things that I want to show you, but don't forget the big value of doing a live stream is that there is a live audience watching. So if you're watching in the chat, please let me know if there are things that you want me to try out. I would love to hear ideas from you because it will definitely make this live stream feel more lively and also feels much more high quality if I'm able to get great suggestions from you. All right, so let's actually get started. Oh, greetings from San Francisco. That brings memory from when I was there a few weeks and it was what? Early May and then early June for me. And it's been almost 1 month since WWDC. So like time flies super fast. Okay, so I've installed Xcode, I've created a new iOS project, and I created a new file, an empty Swift file, code.swift, and we're just going to give it a try here. So how does code completion work? You need to enable it. It's enabled by default, but if it's not for some reason, you will need to go into preferences, text editing, and make sure that this checkbox here, predictive code completion, has been checked. And then the way it works is that as you start typing code, so for instance, I'm going to start typing func and then add, then I'm going to wait a bit, and it's going to make a suggestion. You can see one of the drawbacks of the UI is that it's not telling you that it's loading a suggestion. So sometimes you might be waiting for nothing. I do hope they will improve on this because it got me confused quite a few times. But you can see it suggests the rest of the code. So it suggests to say that the function takes two arguments, a and b, of type int, and also returns an int. You can see that it's not the most generic that you could write because it could have used a generic type that conforms to the protocol numerical, but it's already something to get started. And you can see here at the bottom, it says that with tab, we can insert the prediction. So I've inserted it. Now I'm writing a new line, and you see I get a new prediction, which is the implementation of the method like that. Now let's see if, for instance, I want to try and introduce a generic type. Can it suggest to use something with the generic type numeric? So you need to wait a bit, and you never know if it's going to give you an actual suggestion. So as I was saying, it's a bit frustrating, and there is no way to force it to suggest something, as far as I know. So that doesn't seem to work, but let's remove all of this and see from here if it can say, okay. Sometimes I try to hit escape, but let me try it again. Something like that. Okay, so this time it was able to generate another suggestion. And you can see what's interesting is that if I press on option here, it does say that option is expand prediction. You can do it and it expands it. So basically the ... gets expanded. Here is just an empty line. So it gets expanded to almost nothing, but you can see it. And then it doesn't know what to do else. And if I go in here, what is going to suggest? It can't do anything because there is no plus since it's an arbitrary generic type. So you can see that it's a bit hit and miss. I haven't used Copilot a lot in the past 2 years. I given it a try 2 years ago. To be fair, here I'm writing code that is a bit like nonsensical. So if the UI, if the model was trying to help with Swift UI or Swift code, but app level code, this is a bit nonsensical, but I wanted to show you this just to get started nicely. What I want to do actually is to try and implement one app that I've been using a lot in my live stream. So it's the app that shows data from the movie database. It shows the list of upcoming movies that are currently playing in theaters in the US. And I want to try and implement it, but using the help of this predictive code completion feature. So I'm going to give it a try. So I'm going to go right here. I'm going to rename this file. I'm going to call it movies, just movie. It will be a model. I'm going to try and implement my model right here. So what does my model look like? So it's gonna be a struct, and I'm gonna call it movie like that. And I'm gonna wait to see if it's gonna suggest something or not. So let's wait just a bit. It doesn't seem to suggest anything. So I'll just go inside the struct. And now let's see. Does it suggest a property or not? For now, it doesn't. So I'm going to start typing, for instance, let ID. Okay, it does suggest an ID of type int, which is actually what I want. And then you can see that it suggests other things. A title, which is a string, a release date, which is also a string, an overview, which is a string, and a poster path, which is an optional string. So that's interesting. I Interestingly, I have opened a finished project in another window of Xcode, which is on another screen than the one that I'm sharing for the live. So I'm wondering whether or not it has knowledge of this, but this is quite well what I want. And so while keeping option pressed, I can also hit tab to accept the full suggestion. So poster path is pretty good, except that I don't want it like this. I want it in a different way, but the data is kind of correct. Actually, I might even remove the optionality. I don't need it. I don't care about the release date, but these three properties are perfect. Now let's try something. I want to get the poster, I want to compute the poster URL, so from the poster path. But the thing is, here, unless you know which API I want to hit, it's very hard to make a suggestion. Okay, so first, I forgot to import. Oh, I'm realizing also that in my previous code, I hadn't imported Foundation. So maybe that's the reason why it didn't know about the protocol numeric. That might be why. I don't know if it's in Foundation or not, to be honest. But okay, here I'm going to try and just build a URL. So like that. I'm just gonna tell it that I want to build a URL from a string. And can it suggest something from there? If it could suggest hitting the endpoint that I want, I would be very surprised because I haven't given any hint about which kind of endpoint I want to hit. So I'm going to just start writing it. So something like that. And now I want to see if it could try to suggest to interpolate something here, or maybe if I do it like that, will it suggest that I put the poster URL, the poster path here? Now it seems here it cannot. But that makes sense because there was basically no way of inferring it unless you actually knew you were reading my thoughts, which of course the model cannot do. Now, something that I'm excited to see if predictive code completion can help, because I remember that Copilot was very good at it, is to generate mock data. So first you can see that it offers to generate actually decodable conformance, which seems to make sense. I mean, I think it's actually what I want. I won't need to do it because I will set a decoding strategy to be a snake case on the JSON decoder, but this seems to be correct. And I guess that since this is a popular API that I'm using, many code bases use it, and so the API, not the API, the prediction model was trained on code that was implementing this very popular API. By the way, I realized there is one thing I wanted to say during the intro which I forgot. Is that you might remember that two features about generating code were announced at WWDC. There was what I'm showing you, predictive code completion, which is the Copilot equivalent, but there was also Swift Assist, which is more the ChatGPT equivalent. The reason why I'm not showing you Swift Assist, it's hard to say showing you Swift Assist. The reason why I'm not showing you this other feature called Swift Assist is because it's actually not available yet. If you look at the release note, it says it will be available later this year. So that's why I'm not showing you Swift Assist, which arguably is even more exciting than predictive code completion. So here I don't want the decodable conformance. Instead, I want to write an extension of movie where I'm going to have a static let called mock. And I want to see what it can do from there. So that's quite nice. You can see it suggests a movie, ID 1, titled The Matrix. Overview is also correct. And for the poster path, it's of course incorrect, but there is no way that it can know like the correct poster path. That's very interesting. And it seems that it's, oh no, actually, you can see that it's using TMDB correctly. That's great, except that me, for the poster path, I only want the part that's here at the end. So this last part right here. But I will still accept the suggestion. I will do Control M to split across several lines. And then here, I will just get rid of this. like that. And one thing I want to do just to see if it works is that I'm gonna do static let mocks this time. I want to see if it's going to generate an array of movies. So for now there is only one movie, but you can see that maybe it's still thinking. I don't know. And then here maybe it will generate a second movie. Let's see. Maybe if I add a space. Or maybe if I do something like this, and if I fix here the missing angle brackets, let's see. It seems that it doesn't want to generate the second movie. Once again, the fact there is absolutely no UI to know whether or not predictive code compression is thinking right now is very frustrating, because you're waiting without knowing if something is eventually going to happen. And on a daily basis, I can see it becoming very, very frustrating. But at least it was still able to generate one correct mock, which is pretty cool. We'll see when we run it if this is actually a valid poster path or not. But that seems pretty promising. Then I'm going to add some conformances here. So I want to add conformance to decodable. Let's see if it suggests other conformances. For instance, I would probably want to have equatable because I want to use it in a Swift UI context. Okay. Will it suggest also identifiable or not? But these things here, I don't blame it if it doesn't suggest it, because it's very intentional that I want to use identifiable. And since I haven't written any Swift UI yet, it might not be clear that I do need it from somewhere else in the code. So this thing, I'm less disappointed if it couldn't suggest them for me. I'm a bit disappointed that it didn't generate several movies, to be honest, but we'll see. Maybe it will improve over time. Then I need to implement another struct for what's around the movie, so the actual API response that we get. So I call it movie response. Okay, it did suggest decodability this time, which is quite nice. And then you can see that, oh, not only does it suggest the correct structure, but also it suggested to create a mock along with it. So you can see that it's learning from the rest of the code. And this here is really nice, because it can be very satisfactory to see that you have your mock generated automatically for you. So this is pretty cool. Actually, I won't be needing it, but it's pretty cool that it was smart enough to help me generate it. Okay, now let's implement the movie service. So I just want to say if I just write class, if it can generate something or not. No, I need to still call it like movies service. Let's see. What can it infer from this identifier? Great question. You will probably get to this part, but does it have better suggestion based on comments similar to Copilot? Yes, I will cover it, and I will try to do the two things. So the thing where you write code and then you try to have it generate comments for you, and the thing where you write a comment and you see if it helps you, if it helps generate the code for you. Actually, let's try it right now. Oh, seems like I didn't even need to do to write any comments. So it creates a shared instance. I don't want it, but it's not a problem. It creates a base URL, which is nice, and then a function fetch movies. You can see that it uses compression handlers. Compression handler. So it's kind of like an old API, but you can see that it calls movie/popular. Okay. So it's correct, except that me, I want the upcoming movies. So you know what? I'm not going to accept these things. Instead, I'm just going to accept the curly braces. And here I'm going to start and write the function fetch upcoming, fetch top rated movies. I'm doing something a bit different this time. And let's see. So it did. What's even funny is that it even suggested an API key, which is not mine. So you know, like if you have your API key in open source code, beware because it's basically it's game for any kind of code suggestion AI to give it away to someone else. And it suggested a singleton. Yeah, I mean, Apple did say that this AI has been trained to follow the best practices of Swift and iOS and Apple development. So does it mean that shared instances are now considered the best practice? But yeah, indeed. It also didn't suggest an async function. So it kind of shows that maybe it was trained on code bases that were maybe not super modern, or maybe there was more older code to train it on than modern code. But I'm a bit disappointed that it didn't suggest an async function, to be honest. What I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna try to just start to write the prototype of the async version of it, just to see if it helps a bit. Let's see if it suggests now returning a movie response and then implementing the actual call under the hood. So it seems here it's not suggesting anything. What if I, okay. So we have an array of movie, okay. Let's see. What is going to suggest inside this function now? So it creates the URL, okay, with some API key, okay. Then it fetches the data. So try await shared data from URL. Okay, I'm not sure this code is correct because I think there is a second argument return, but why not? And then it decodes the answer. Okay, yeah, but here the data. So there is an issue because here it's a tuple return and we only want the first member of the tuple. And here, so the JSON decoder, actually, I would probably want to create a constant one somewhere. So I'm going to come here. By the way, let me show you a new shortcut in Xcode. You can do a right click and new empty file. And then you can call it, for instance, utils, and you create your file like this, a little bit faster than doing Command N, you know, with this UI right here. Another comment, is it possible to ask it for other suggestions apart from what it suggests initially? So if this was already covered, I tuned it a bit late. So this wasn't asked, it's a great question. As far as I know, you cannot. That's a big difference with Copilot, because with Copilot, you can ask for other predictions. Here, you cannot do it as of right now. It might change in the future, but as of right now, you can't. And it's also one of the little drawbacks compared to Copilot, to be honest. So here I wanted to have my JSON decoder, but first I wanted to see, I typed too fast. I wanted to see what it was going to suggest here on this file called utils. So import foundation, okay. And then it starts to put functions like isValidEmail. So because it saw that the file is called utils.swift, you can see it from the command here. So it's not what I want. I want to have my JSON decoder, and let's see what it's going to suggest. So creating a decoder, and then key decoding strategy, convert from snake case, okay. It's missing a return. So will it suggest the return or not? It's funny if it can't suggest the return, which is arguably the easiest part because you do need it at this point, and seems like it wouldn't suggest it. Okay. But it's great because the suggestion here is great because you might know the intent, but you might not remember exactly what's the name of this property. So key decoding strategy. So the fact that it was able to help me is pretty nice. Let me go back to my movie right here. And so now I can use my... Actually, you know what? Let me get rid of this line and see if now it suggests using the JSON decoder. No, it still doesn't do it. So I need to manually use my own JSON decoder like that. And also, I'm going to put my API key right here. Like that. Okay, so I have my movies service. Later down the line, I will try to see if it can help me do dependency injection. But for now, I want to, I guess I want to move to actually like implementing the view. So let's try and do that. You know what? I will do it without using a view model. I will do things like fairly simply. So I'm going to rename this as movies view, and I'm also going to rename here the file and here the view. This way Xcode has all the context it needs, and predictive code completion has all the context it needs to make a good prediction. Then I'm going to get rid of the body, and I'm going to start writing some code. Here I just need to update this. So here, arguably, I would need an addState property. I need to do something here. Let me just put... I'm just going to put an empty view for now, just so the project builds, because I'm not sure. Oh, here I forgot something. I forgot to actually return response.results. Okay. So the project, I have issues here. What's happening? Why isn't my project building? What did I do that's so crazy? I'm gonna try and clean it just to see. Okay, cannot find content view in scope because I renamed it. I should have renamed it using the refactor tool. All right. So let's go back to the movies view. So here I would have an addState property which holds an array of movies. So let's see if I start writing addState, if it suggests something like a var maybe behind. I'm gonna write var. Okay, now it does suggest what I wanted. Perfect. So now I guess I can try here. You know what? Do I want to have this default value or not? Yeah, let's keep it just to simplify. But here, let's try to actually pass something and pass an array which will be movie.mock like that. This way the preview can work and can display actual data. Actually, you know what? No, I'm stupid. Since I'm connected to the internet, I don't need a mock here. I can just like implement and it will make the actual network call. So there is no need for this. So what I want now, I want to have an implementation of the view. So I'm going to use a list and see what does it suggest. It should suggest using movies. So passing movies to list. So it uses it for selection, but I don't want it for selection. And let's see. That's interesting. So selection, it puts a navigation link. So actually, maybe I don't know this API. I was more familiar with this. What's interesting is that it changed the suggestion without me doing anything. But okay, this is what I wanted to have. I'm not sure what the API selection does, to be honest. Now it gives me a VStack to have the title of the movie with a font headline and the overview with a font sub-headline. That seems to be reasonable. So let's try and add this code. And now I'm going to quickly start adding the code in order to load the list of movies. So I'm going to add a task here that's going to be triggered when my view appears. And here I will do it quick and dirty. So I will create an instance of my service, call the method load movies on it, and then store the result in the array right here. So how could I do it? I could do something like movies service like that. Then I could call the method fetch top-rated movies. What's interesting is that you can see, even though the method is async, it suggests something that is with a syntax for a compression handler. So it seems that it doesn't understand the fact that the method is async, but it sees fetch, and so it understands that it must be async, and it reverts back to the old syntax. So at least there is some sense, because it wanted to generate something which used the compression handler, and so now it wants to also use the result as if it were a compression handler, but it hasn't taken into account the fact that I made it async in the code base. Or maybe it does take it into account, but the signal is not enough to overcome the fact that the AI leans much more strongly towards the compression handler end of things. So that's a bit frustrating, to be honest, but we'll have to deal with it anyway. You know what? I'm going to separate it across several lines. So I'm going to do service equal just to see if it can suggest, okay, that it could do it. Then I'm going to be like, so this time it did it correctly. That's interesting. Also, it suggested movie service, but I called it movies service. So you can see that it doesn't necessarily keep the identifiers correct. You can see that there is a lot of probabilities behind it, which is what this kind of AI do anyway. They do probability at scale. So here it's calling the method not fetch movie, but actually it's called fetch top rated movies. So it's not always correct when it comes to naming once again. Okay, it should be marked as try also. And then we have the result. And so we would do movies equal, and let's see. So it adds a sort which is not needed, to be honest. I just need to do equal result. Normally that should be okay. Oh, and when you have a task like that, so a task, it takes apparently something that is non-throwing, and because I'm throwing, it doesn't seem to be very happy with me right now. Yeah, it doesn't take a throwing task. That's not a problem. I'm just looking to see if there is a version which is throwing. No, doesn't seem to be the case. No problem. I will just take my code right here and put it inside a do block. And once again, doing it quick and dirty. And also it allows us to see what the AI can do in order of predicting what's inside the catch clause. Adding a print would have been useful. It's going to be able to suggest printing. Okay, that's the best it can do, it seems. But for the good news is that we do have a working view. Look at that. We have the data that's correctly being displayed. So here I probably want to add a line limit to 3 lines. But hey, we get something that's pretty nice and pretty close to what I had implemented in my previous videos and live streams, to be honest. What could we do to improve? Oh yes, we could try and add the async, the poster, the image of the poster. So let's try and do that. So first here, I'm going to embed this into an H tag, and then we'll see if it will suggest to put the image. So you can see here, it suggests if you can get the URL. What's interesting is that it tries to build a URL from the poster path. So it's not that far away, to be honest, but it's not exactly what I want either. So let's try and write just async image. Okay, so it suggests, I hit escape to close the code completion, the normal one, and it also escaped the predictive code completion. Okay, so what do I have? So URL isn't correct, but the rest seems to be pretty interesting. So you know what? I will accept. I made the mistake. I did Alt plus return, whereas it's Alt plus tab. Okay, let's go again. So we are almost there, except that this is not correct. So instead, here I just want to do movie.poster URL. that's better. We just need to configure the image correctly because now it does a fill. We can see the poster which are correct, but we only see like the very center of the poster. But that's not a problem. We're going to fix that. So how can we fix this? We're going to remove this, and instead we're going to use the other API of async image, where you can pass in a closure in which you can handle the image which was fetched. So let's see. I wanted to see if it could suggest something on how to handle the image. So it does image.image, that don't make a lot of sense, then resizable, and then frame. Once again, I did Alt plus Enter. I feel it's a mistake that many people will make because it's so easy to do Alt plus Enter, especially because you do use Enter for the regular code completion. The fact that there is no shortcut that I know of to re-trigger code completion is a bit frustrating. So yeah, this thing doesn't make sense. And here, it seems to also not make sense. So I'm going to try and help it a bit. So I want to call first resizable. Okay, why does it want to do image.image? I don't get it. Oh, okay. It's because, because this here, I think here I have the version, I didn't write everything because I want to write this version where you have both a closure for what to do with the image and a closure for what to do for the placeholder while the image is loading. And I think that's why it did image.image, because yeah, but in my case, no, I just want to do resizable. But when you only provide, exactly, when you only pass one closure, then you get an image phase as an argument, which is not what I wanted to get. Okay, so resizable, then I want to do scale to fit. Will it suggest it or not? Let's see that. It doesn't seem to do it. Just giving it a second try. Okay, aspect ratio. This code is terrible with a raw value and magic numbers. This code is absolutely terrible. So I want to do scale to fit, not fill. And then I want to give it a frame. And for the frame, it gives an interesting value. Yeah, why not? I mean, I wanted to do 160, but at this point, it's like potato, basically. I'm just going to reindent everything. Okay. And for the placeholder, so I want to put a progress view. So let's see. So here it talks about something called image placeholder, which doesn't exist in that case. I'm just going to try and nudge it towards the progress view. And what I want to see is whether it's going to suggest using the same frame than what I have above. So, okay, why not this style? But I want to see if it suggests the same frame. Yes, it did suggest the same frame than above. And you can see that originally it suggested 150. And then I changed it to 160. So it does seem to show that this here is a signal that helped generate this line, which is quite nice because it shows that it's also context aware, at least at the local file level. I guess it's also aware at the project level, but here we have what seems to be a proof, a light proof, but still an amount of proof that it understands the current context. And we could see the placeholder even though it was very fast. Okay, so that's pretty nice, to be honest. What could we do next? Next, you know what? I want to see if it can help me do dependency injection. So I want to abstract this API under good point. You wonder how the AI helps with all the Metal stuff. I think it can help a lot because Metal is a typical place where you need to know a lot of API by heart because you need to configure a lot of things. So I guess it could help. I don't know if it's been trained for Metal, to be fair. And to be also fair, I'm not a big expert on metal, so I wouldn't be able to know to tell the difference from good code from bad code, and even maybe working code from non-working code. But definitely something that if you have time to give it a try, I would recommend to give it a try. If it makes sense for your work, maybe it could be useful, or maybe it could be a terrible idea and it could give some really subpar result. But that's a good point. Also, I would be curious if you have a project which still has Objective-C. Does this work with Objective-C or not? So we'll see that. But first, I want to see if it can help me create a protocol to abstract this API behind the protocol and then implement a mocked version that would use this mock data right here. So let's see. I'm gonna start to write protocol and see what it does. It doesn't suggest something like movies servicing, but I'm going to start and write movies just to see. Movies view model type. No, not what I want. But if I start to be like that, okay, it's the first time I see this UI. I don't know what it's gonna do. Oh, it suggested to change the name completely to protocol. Okay, so not what I wanted at all. So I'm just going to give it the name movie servicing. And now, can it suggest to write the same function signature and what we have below? Seems like it can for now, but let's see what happens if here I add the conformance to let it know that, hey, it's going to conform to this. Can it do something or not? Okay, so it was able to suggest. You can see that it also added an @main actor requirement. It could make sense in a way. It could make sense in a way. Actually, I'm wondering, I'm not super familiar with using @main actor annotations in protocol. I'm wondering if you wouldn't want, I guess it would make more sense to annotate the full protocol with @main actor. But to be honest, the fact, actually no, thinking about it, it suggested @main actor, but there is no reason to be at main actor here because this can be executed on any actor. We are not handling any kind of sensitive, shared data. We are making a request and returning the result, but we are not handling any kind of internal state. So if it were a method implemented inside the view model, which also maintains state, then the @main actor could maybe make sense. But here, I think it doesn't make sense. Interesting though that it tried to suggest it. And now let's try and implement the mocked version of it. So I'm gonna go again, just write class and see if it suggests implementing a mock movie servicing maybe. Gonna give it a hint. Oh, it seems like I was successful. So mock movies service, and you can see. So here is going a bit crazy here, but the rest seems to be correct. So that's great because it's one of the use cases which I had found really cool with Copilot, which was when you need to implement any kind of boilerplate. So mocks typically, it's really great at it. First, to generate this kind of random, not random data, but on the opposite, sample data that makes sense. So the opposite of random data, but also to generate all of these types. Okay, now I want to see just one thing. I want to see what happens if here, instead of the result, no, actually, I just want to here use a mock movies service. Just to see if, why is it not happy? Oh yeah, because I started putting here the thing between an array when I didn't need to. I want to see if the poster URL it gave, you can see. So here, the poster URL it gave doesn't seem to be correct, actually. Or maybe no, or maybe it's because there is this trailing slash, which is already here. So maybe it's just because of that, actually. Let's see. Still not loading. I'm looking to see if there is an error in the console. No, because this didn't seem like random data, but it seems that it doesn't work. That sucks. That's a bit disappointing, to be honest. But it's possible that maybe the URL also like changed. It's not guaranteed that maybe these URLs are not guaranteed to be stable like over time. So maybe it was correct at one point. But at least it's good to see that always take what's suggested as with a grain of salt, especially when it's technical values like these ones where you don't know if it's still going to be valid over time. Okay. Next, I want to see if it can help us also refactor. So you know what? Here I'm just going to go back to the normal movie service. And I'm going to try and introduce a view model. And I'm going to try and move code from between the view and the view model. So I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it movies view model like that. And so here I'm going to have my class called movies view model. And we'll see how it's going to work. I'm going to mark it at main actor. And what I'll do is that I'm going to have the two displayed like that, side by side. So in the view model, can it suggest something to start with? Because I'm going to want to move, for instance, the array of movies from one into the other. To be fair, I'm less familiar of how you do a view model with the new observation API. So I think even though it's the older way of doing it, I will use observable object because it will help me since I know how this works. I'm just going to import foundation, which I hadn't done. Maybe that's why also it couldn't suggest anything. Really, the fact that it doesn't show you that it's trying to think is really for me like the big limitation because it's so frustrating. So I'm going to add the observable object conformance. And then let me try and add, so it suggests to add the object will change publisher, but I don't want this. Here, instead, I want to add an at published property. So is it okay? So it does suggest. Okay, so it's interesting. You can see that it feels almost as if it has regurgitated code from somewhere else. It didn't reuse any of the code that is in the other file, so you can see that it's not context aware at all in this case, but it did still correctly suggest having a function fetch movies. Yes, I'm going to change this. I'm just going to try and write something like let service just to see if it can take a cue from it. So you can see it's still generated movie service without an S, which I did add. So I guess I didn't name it as the majority of people would name it. It also shows that with this kind of predictive code completion, as soon as you do something that is outside of what the majority does, then the tool is going to struggle more to help you. Okay, so fetch top-rated movies is correct, except that we need to do try and await, but we can mark this method as throws and async also. And then, await here. And then I guess we want to do movies equal, and so movies equal result. Yeah, like that. Okay, I need to change. It's async before throws. Okay. All right. So this is pretty okay for now. And so here I would need instead to do an at state object var. I'm going to try view model. Okay, so this is correct. But then this doesn't make any sense but the first line was correct. This time it did call it movies view model with the right naming. And so here I need to change this to, let's see, can it suggest view model.movies? It's so frustrating that there is no way to know if it's thinking or not. Honestly, it's like, I know I keep saying it, but it's like, it's legitimately bugging me. Okay, if I start to write view like that, view model, does it suggest doing dot movies? Actually, I'm not sure if it keeps suggesting if there are characters ahead on the same line. I'm not sure that it works that way. Okay, and so now here I can just remove this code, and instead I would want to do view model dot fetch movies. So let's see if it can suggest that. Okay, so it's going into a completely different direction, even trying to create the decoder inline inside the view. So in terms of best practices, we're at the level of just put all of your code in the app delegate and we'll see how it goes. So I will not do that. I will try to give it a hint by just writing view model. Oh, let's see. View model.movies equal try await with a page. So like the ID is here, but the execution isn't because I just want to do fetch movies actually. And normally the project should build. Oh yes, I still need to do try await. Okay, project does build. Let me put back the preview. See whether or not the preview is still working. The preview is still working correctly. Okay, what else could we do? I'm not gonna do the detailed view because it's basically the same thing than doing the normal view in terms of how predictive code completion can help us. What I would like to do, however, is to try and implement some tests, maybe. So how could we implement some tests? I could try to write a test for the view model, but the thing is, for that, I need to add the code in order to be able to inject here the movie service. So let's do that. Let's see here. I'm just going to do nothing. So it suggests to put an init and to call. Oh, it suggests to call fetch during the init, which is not a good practice when you do SwiftUI. So in terms of like the AI has been trained with best practices, take it with a big grain of salt, to be honest, because we've seen a few anti-patterns being suggested. So I want to do let service. Okay, we are almost there, but I want to call it. No, if I want to say the type explicitly, maybe it's because I want to something that is not obvious. Okay. Okay. So now there is this thing right here, so I can get rid of this line right here. Actually, I can just do return like that. Oh no, because I set the result. So I can do movies, yeah, like that. Okay. I knew there was a one-liner here. I just didn't know which one. And so now what I want is to have an init. What's interesting is that the init could be a member-wise initializer, so I could use it without using the AI, just using the refactoring tool. It still wants to do this crazy init, which I don't want. So here I'm going to just do the init, but using the normal, the not smart, the dumb code completion, which is actually smarter than the smart one in this case. Okay. So here I think I have everything to write tests for my movies view model. So when I created my testing target, my project, I added a testing target which actually uses the new Swift testing framework. So I will do a dedicated live stream to Swift testing later down the line this year, but we'll still get to see a glimpse of it right now. And I'm curious to see also how the predictive code completion will be able to help using Swift testing, provided that Swift testing is a framework that is brand new. So outside of Apple, there was no code to train the AI on when it was being trained. So I'm very curious about it. So I'm gonna call this test view model fetches movies, for instance. And then let's see how it's going to work. Let's see if it's going to suggest anything. Here I'm genuinely curious to try and see what it's gonna do. So it tries to call, you can see that there are some ideas. You can see it does XCT assert true. So it seems that it has no knowledge of Swift testing for now. But okay, the ID wasn't entirely stupid. We just want here to create the view model. So like that. Why does it do this thing? Because, so wait, here I did an add testable import. So normally, yeah. So when I said that this was good, yes, it's good, but it's not what I want. What I want to do, actually, I don't care about, I mean, you can provide this if you want, but actually, what I want is the service argument. That's the one that I'm the most interested in. So, much better like that. And actually, I think I shouldn't have put this value right here because then you cannot reset it a second time, which makes sense. And just here, when I create it, I will say, okay, I do want the production, the live version of the service. Okay. Let me see. Okay, still working correctly. Now we go back to the test. Where are they? They are here. Okay. So we pass in. It seems like it didn't register that I added this. I did build and it did succeed. Okay, now it's good. So here I can pass the mock movies service. And so now here indeed you can do try await. And it's not even fetch movies. No, it's fetch movies. This one is correct. Why is it I think? I think it's because I've marked it as @main actor. I think that's the reason. Why. To be fair, I am not sure whether or not you need to mark it with @main actor. No, I think you need to do it because if you don't do it, then updating a published property from outside the main thread is a crash for sure. So then if you didn't, then you will need to mark each method as @main actor. So no, this makes sense to mark the view model as @main actor, but then it has one drawback, which is that here in the test, or can you mark the method here as @main actor also? Turns out you can do it. We'll see if it creates an issue later down the line, but you can mark it @main actor. This way, everything that is @main actor, you don't need to explicitly await when interacting with it. So this seems to be good. And then, of course, here, it makes no sense to do this assert true because they showed us it's the syntax is like a pound and then expect, I think. So I just want to see what it's going to suggest. Apparently nothing. I'm gonna do pound expect, and then the condition would be, so it would be view model dot movies dot is empty equal false, for instance. Let's see if this test runs or not. So does it build, does it run, and does it pass? Let's see. Still running, you can see it here. Actually, a simulator has been created, has been spawned to run the test. I'm gonna put it on the other screen because it's not gonna be super useful for us. Of course, it always takes a lot of time the first time that you want to install to the simulator. One of the features that I wanted to test with Swift testing and predictive code completion is the fact that with Swift testing, you can set arguments for your test, and then you can pass values for these arguments through a macro. And I was hoping that predictive code completion could help generate this, and ultimately it will be able to, but it seems that it's not yet familiar enough with the whole Swift testing framework. So the simulator has rebooted, so we'll see what's going to happen. In the meantime, I'm going to try and maybe see if it can suggest something else, maybe a second assertion. Okay, so test succeed. Now I would like to test that the first element in the array is indeed the one that's declared as the static let mock in the extension of movie. So it seems that it doesn't want to suggest anything. So it seems that in this Swift testing context, it's a bit lost. To be fair, I do prefer it not to suggest anything than to suggest something that is plain wrong. You know, just like you always prefer an engineer to say I don't know than to say something even though they have no idea what they're talking about. So kind of the same idea. But I guess you would want to say viewModel.movies.first equal first dot mock. And I would say it's better to write movie.mock even though it can be inferred, but it's way better for readability. Then I'll try to add a new line on this test file to see what's going to happen, if it's going to suggest writing a new test. If it suggests to write a new test using XCTest, it's going to kill me. We'll see. Because if the context it has is this, it seems very similar to an XCTest naming. So at least the test was successful. But let's see. What will you suggest that we do? So he put, I said it put at main actor. Okay. So this time it suggested the correct syntax and it suggested injecting an error. The only thing is that I don't support injecting an error for now. But A for effort, because at least it got the syntax right. I want to do a few more tests. I want to test a few more things around test, but for that, I'm going to write some code that's a bit more simpler, just so that we can write tests around it. And for this, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it just code. I'm going to write some basic code, but for instance, you know what? I'm going to write again my function. I'm going to import foundation and then do func add. So it's going to give me the function to add two integers together. So arguably not the most interesting function ever, but at least one that it's easy to write tests for, even though the test won't make any sense because it will be test that just, it will be like test that, that the test is, you end up with things like where the implementation and the test are the duplicate of the same code. And so you're just testing that you've duplicated the same code correctly. So interestingly, when the syntax is not correct, it doesn't see what it wants to suggest. Also, I'm starting to hear the fans of my MacBook Pro and it's starting to heat up a bit. So I guess doing both live streaming and the AI might be a bit tough on the CPU. By the way, in terms of spec, right now I'm running on a MacBook Pro 14-inch M1 Pro and 16 GB of RAM. Checking. Yeah, 16 gigabytes. So I have the requirements, but nothing more than the requirements also. Okay, so I have implemented my function. Now let me go back to the test. So I will do at test func test add, for instance, not add movie, test add function like that. Oh, so this time it did suggest a correct Swift testing syntax. So when I said it didn't know anything about Swift testing, I was wrong because it does know stuff about Swift testing. So normally this test should be valid, and you can see that it generated a valid test case. So that's pretty neat. And now I'm gonna change the game a bit because I'm going to add arguments to my testing function. And then I will try to pass arguments through the add test and we'll see what it's going to give us. And while I do that, for the people who are watching live, if you have any suggestion on what I could try next with predictive code completion, let me know. I know that we still need to try the thing with the comments. So generating comments for a code and using comments to direct how code should be generated. But if you have other ideas, let me know. So we have this one, but now I'm going to change it. I'm going to start writing, for instance, A, like that. And let's see if it's going to generate something else. Will it suggest... Yeah, then you must specify arguments from the macro test. Okay. So I'm going to put the code like it was. I will just add what I wanted to add. So something like that. Okay. And then, you know what? I want to see if it can update to put A, B, and A plus B where they should be. Okay, so that is wrong in many cases. So expect A plus B equal 10. I think here it's kind of like hallucinating. So I will write the code myself like that. A plus B. And let me put parentheses just to make sure that we are good, even though I don't think that these parentheses are needed. And now here, I need to add arguments. So here, arguments. All right. You know what? I'm just going to open Safari and do Swift testing argument. I'm just looking to see like Swift testing. Okay, I'm just looking at the documentation actually to see the way that it works because I don't want to pass any. Okay, display name I don't care, and traits I don't care either, but I still want to know what is inside of these two things. So here, the display name. So here, what you can do is that you can pass a string that will be used instead of here the name of the function, I guess, but I don't want it, and there is a default value of any. And here, what's a test trait? Let me see. If I do like test trait, no. Yeah, it was written like that. Actually, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna search for test trait in the documentation. Test trait Swift. Okay, so let me just show you what I see. I need to put my window at the right size. So this is the source of Swift testing. By the way, we're learning that Swift testing is open source, which is surprising. I wouldn't have expected Apple to open source it. Let me just check. Okay, it's indeed the one from Apple. It's not like another product with the same name. Okay, and so these traits, you can say things like, for instance, okay, recursivity. It seems there is only recursivity for now, but I guess maybe it's to add some kind of some traits, some kind of behavior to how your tests are being run. I will just try to provide nothing for now, and so here arguments. So it's like zip to sequence. So it's the type that you get when you do a zip of two arrays together. So what is going to look like? I guess it's going to be something like that. Yes, an array of tuples. Okay. So here I can do, for instance, 2 and 3. And then 4 and 6, I guess. Let me split this across several lines each time. No, this is not nice. I wanted to do that. Okay. Is it going to build? So normally, if it works as I think it should, it's going to run the test 2 times. The first time by plugging the value 2 and 3 for A and B, and second time by plugging the value 4 and 6 for still A and B. And I should see 2 instances of the test here being run. So indeed, the test was run 2 times with the values. But what I wanted to see was whether or not code completion could suggest the values for me here. It's what I wanted to see. Like that's the added value I was expecting from code completion, and it seems that it's not understanding what I want at all. To be fair, this syntax of passing an array of tuples is a bit weird. Maybe if it has never seen it, it cannot infer it like that. Also, one thing that's good to know is that, remember the first time in this file, it suggested to use XCT assert. Then the next time it did suggest expect, but because I had used expect in the same file. So maybe if I try to write another test for another function, now that the correct syntax is here, maybe it will be able to correctly suggest. So let's try this hypothesis. For this, I'm going to create a new function, which I'm going to call multiply. This way we can keep on the same idea of re-implementing the basic operations of the language. It seems it doesn't want. Okay, it has nothing to suggest. Well, that's not a problem. I can implement it myself. All right. And now, you see, I'm going to take this code, copy and paste it. So remove these values right here. I'm going to call it test multiply function. So here I'm going to call multiply, and here I'm going to do that. And now I want to see whether or not it can generate correct values for the array of arguments. If it can, I'm going to be, oh, so it generated, but it took the same than above. So like it generated, but with minimum risk. At least these values are correct. So you can see that it does understand from local code, but what it can infer from local code, since there is not a lot of it, isn't very advanced. But I'm sure that for now there are still ways to make it generate data, random data, and then you copy and paste it manually. But ultimately, once it will be familiar with the Swift testing syntax enough, here I think that there is a lot of potential to be able to write tests that cover more cases without making much more effort as a developer. So I'm really enthusiastic on that one. I'm a bit sad that it's not there yet, but to be fair, Swift testing has just been released, and anyway, this is all still in beta. So this is perfectly acceptable. But I'm I'm very hopeful for this. I'm very hopeful. I hope it's going to work ultimately. And so what I wanted to do to finish was to try and see with writing comments. So first thing, easy. Can it generate comments for this function, which is fairly easy to comment, you could say, because it just multiplies its two parameters. It seems like it's not doing anything. One thing I want to see what's the correct, because there is a correct syntax for documentation. Okay, it's more free stuff. So I'm gonna try and put 3 slashes, and let's see. I gave it a try just before the live stream because I did want to check that everything was working before doing the live stream, and it didn't work. So maybe it's not supported, maybe it will never be supported, maybe it's not supported for now, but generating comments from code doesn't seem to be supported, at least here the documentation. Now let's see what happens if I try to write the comment inside the body of the function. Also seems to do nothing. Let's try in another file. Like for instance, I don't know. Here, for instance, let's try to write a comment here. Okay. So it seems generating comments is not a use case for now. Now, let's see if a comment in the code can help. For that, what we're going to do is that we're going to use the same place in the code. I'm going to create another function called fetch upcoming movies. You can see that this time it was able to reuse the code that I've written above. So it gets smarter. Like it might make mistakes, but then it's able to tailor its behavior using what you've written just before. So that's good to know, because if you need to implement 3 functions that look the same, maybe for the first one it will struggle, but for the next 2 it will be able to help you. Of course, it's not an excuse to duplicate code 3 times. What was the things for which copy and paste was a bad practice are still a bad practice when you have predictive code completion. It's not suggesting the return, which seems to be like the easiest part, arguably. So it's funny to see how like sometimes it struggles on things that do seem like easier. Okay, and now what I want to see, actually what I wanted to see was put a comment that says that they need to be sorted by title. So I'm going to remove this, and then, or rather, here I want to say something like sort the movies by title. And is it going to suggest? You can see that it was able to do it in a bit of a stupid way, because it's calling the function recursively on the response, which is not a place where you can call the function. So like this is extra, but the rest, okay, yeah, you need to do response.results. Okay, so it got one identifier wrong. But besides that, so you can write a comment and then have the comment influence the code that's suggested. So that's good to know. So we've seen that commenting code doesn't work, but generating code taking comments into account, so being like, I don't know, like comment aware, basically, this one does work. And this one could be pretty useful, to be honest, because for SwiftUI, maybe you would be able to also add some hints that way. I'm just going to add the return, just so that the code, the project builds. I want to try it for SwiftUI, so let's see. what could we add in the UI, and what kind of comment could we write to give a hint that it's what we want. We can do something like that, just like that feels out of the blue, but like adding, for instance, like a blue circle here, like here, show a blue circle, for instance. Is it going to suggest code to So what's funny is that it does it, but it adds a lot of verbosity, like show the circle, it's indeed blue, but only show it if fetch movie, which is a function that is not even called, contains the movie. So it's funny because it generates the correct stuff, but it puts like a weird condition around it. But you can see that it did the trick. And that might seem stupid, but if you have a UI where you need to have an indicator for when, now I think I understand maybe why it did that, because this could be a UI for indicating something that hasn't been read, like unread message, unread notification. And so in that case, putting an if to check if it's contained inside an unread data set, that could make sense. So that might be why it put the if there, but in that case it wasn't needed. But it shows that sometimes it might not be hallucinating, but it might just be like taking with it context that was present in other similar code bases where it learned how to do what you want, but this specific context, this specific business rule is not part of your own requirements, and so that's where there is this bit of a mismatch. But it's very interesting that we got to see this behavior, and still trying to think about what we could do. I'm going to search. I'm searching for platform. So the platform state of the union of 2024. I'm trying to watch the video. I just want to see when they showed not Swift testing, when they showed predictive code completion. I want to see which examples they showed. Okay, so they showed the example of adding like sorted, okay. Oh, they show something that's interesting is that there is a way to not to get several suggestions, but to switch to another suggestion. So I'm going, they also show like writing a comment above the body of a view to give a hint. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so what they were showing was that, let me find a way to do it. Here, for instance. So I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna remove this. And so here you can see that I've selected font on the regular code completion, and it suggests font and then headline. This part, the headline, is predictive code completion. Now, if I switch to, for instance, font weight, then you can see that the predictive code completion has also changed because it's no longer suggesting headline for the argument, but bold. So that's something which I hadn't showed you, which is that you can change your choice in the code completion, the regular one, and the predictive code completion works along with it. So that's good to know. And you can see also that here, for instance, there is a prediction, but here, when it's foreground style, there is no prediction available. So you might not have a prediction for each of the code completion entries. What's interesting is that if I hit return, you see, it's very tricky because you are inside the code completion, and if you hit return, it's going to select the code completion, but not the headline part. So it's just as if you had selected an entry in code completion, like it was before Xcode 16. And if you want to have the actual prediction in addition to the completion, then you need to do tab actually. So it makes sense that they put this on two different keys. First, because Copilot already uses tab, and so it makes sense to keep like the muscle memory for people who have used it a lot. And also, it makes sense because it's two different features. You might want to accept the regular code completion and not the prediction one, but I feel like getting confused between hitting return and hitting tab is going to be quite confusing at the beginning while we get used to the feature. I'm looking at the time. We've been together for almost 1 hour and a half. I think I've covered most of what I wanted to show you, even a bit more because we did see some Swift testing actually, and but I will show you Swift testing in more details later down the summer. What do I want to say to conclude? So first, if you've watched live, thank you for being here. Thank you for being present in the chat. It always makes things feels way more lively for me. I'm not speaking alone in my house. I'm actually speaking to actual people, which is always good for the mental sanity, I guess. Also, so if you watch the replay and you have any ideas of other things that I could try with predictive code completion, or things that you've tried on your end and that you saw worked very well or either worked very poorly, please let me know in the comments. I would be super curious to know about them. Once again, a big thank you to RevenueCat who sponsored this live stream, and thanks to their support, I'm able to keep my content creation at the level that it is at today. And yeah, I think it's the end. For me, it's almost the end of the day. But since we are beginning of July 2024, as I record the live stream, I'm actually going to go watch the new episode of House of the Dragon. So I wanted to watch it before the live stream, but I've learned that when you watch something on the Vision Pro before going on camera, then you have like marks across your head that look very weird. So I've come to learn that you cannot use the Vision Pro in the hours before you record content. Otherwise, it feels like you got punched in the face, basically. So like you learn one new thing every day. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching. Enjoy your evening, enjoy the rest of your day, and see you soon for another live stream or another video. Bye bye.